Good evening. Welcome back to our public hearing. Mr. Marino had just addressed us on the sewer issues. Is there anybody else that has any questions for the applicant or for Mr. Marino or for the commissioners? Nobody from the public wishes to address the commission? Okay, thank you. Excuse me?
Is that favor or against or just questions?
Well, that was questions, to address, and proceed with a couple of things. One of the questions that I have, or concerns that I have, is we initially had the ratio of 1 and 2 bedroom homes at 67%. Then it was changed to, on one of the proposals, to 50%. Mr. Porto stated that it was their intent to have it 67%, and then it was reverted back to 50%. My personal feeling is that I would prefer, if we go forward with this, that it remain the 1 to 2 bedroom units at 67%. I feel that that keeps the market value a more parallel move to a person who lives in Orange to sell their existing home and move into this type of development. I don't know if the feelings of the rest of the commissioners on that issue. And obviously questions, comments from the applicants.
The one thing about, there is a push on age 55 to allow the bedroom count to go a little higher, and there are various reasons for that. As we get older, sometimes couples don't stay in the same bedroom. Hate to say that, but also as you have a younger active adult, you also have the opportunity in many cases for even an aged parent to reside with them on these first floor units that we would be forced to make into dens otherwise, where maybe the 80-year-old parent could stay in a first floor one bedroom for a couple of years, and that's an opportunity there. And also, as they're active adults, sometimes these extra rooms, if they are dens, that solves a lot of that. But the extra room is used; it's used for hobbies and things of that nature. We're just trying to respond to the marketplace. That's why we. When we originally had the higher percentage of 1 and 2 bedrooms units, we had a language in there that would exclude any dens or lofts from being interpreted as bedrooms. But as we removed that, then we went to the more balanced percentage to compensate for that.
Comments from the commissioners on that subject?
Just repeat your proposal to me again.
Well, initially the proposal from the applicant was 67%. And I think that if we kept 67% of the units being 1 or 2 bedroom units, obviously a 2-bedroom home does not have as much value as a 3-bedroom home, typically. And I think if we did that, they would keep the value of the units a more parallel move from a person 55 plus selling their existing home in the town of Orange and being able to move into these. These are not going to be cheap units. They're going to be.
Well, I don't think someone selling their home in Orange will be able to afford this. It's going to be somebody in Fairfield County that will move into this project.
That's why I think if we keep the 67% 1 and 2, it keeps it more of a maybe the 3-bedroom units might be priced higher than a typical home in Orange would sell for and make a parallel move. But I think the 1 and 2 bedroom units, I think the market will dictate that they would be a much more parallel move. They could sell their home in Orange, a typical home in Orange. And when I say typical, the newer homes are million plus, and but the older homes, you have 1,200, 1,500, 2,000 square foot ranches or raised ranches, and those are going in the neighborhood that.
Yeah, I think that just by taking notice, I mean, most of the people 55 in this town and older are at least a lot of them, I think, are in the older homes, not the newer homes that were built in the last 5 or 10 years.
All right, and the market value of those homes is roughly in the 350 range, and I would guess that these 2-bedroom units would probably, the market would generate about that same price for these. And as I said, that's why I would prefer to keep that at 67% so that it makes it more of a reach for Orange residents to make this move. I don't know if the commission agrees with that logic or not, or.
Well, it's hard to know for sure because you don't have a lot of information as to what the prices are going to be. But your point is well taken. I mean, you wouldn't want to be. The idea here is to make this housing available to current Orange residents.
And I don't think the applicant is being deliberately vague on this. I think, as the market dictates when they get built, that'll generate, that'll tell them what the price they're going to get for them. I mean, obviously, they might not get the price they want for them once they're up, depending on how the housing market goes. So I don't think that the applicant is being deliberately vague when asked that question. They don't know what they'll be able to get. I mean, let's face it, any developer's going to get the maximum they can for it. That's, nobody's changing that idea. They've never came for us and tried to say this was going to be an affordable community. That's never been what was presented to us.
But I would agree with you, though. I mean, to err on the side of, having more housing that would be more readily affordable.
Yeah, and there are, we've seen the architect's layout of these things. There are several rooms that could be used, for an emergency bedroom, we'll call it, for guests and so on. So I'm not overly concerned with that.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Anderson would like to be heard on this point, if you could.
Absolutely.
Sure.
For the record, Doug Anderson from Anderson Wilcox. The whole concept behind the development, I can understand your point as far as trying to and it was our goal. It is our goal to have these units designed for residents of Orange, just based on kind of everything we've worked through. But one of the things that we see that is something that I think most people desire is the ability to have that extra room that would be for guests or for grandchildren visiting or what have you. And for instance, if there was a situation where people did sleep in separate beds or there was a caregiver there, you get into a situation where there's not the ability to have that guest room. And the fact of the matter is, I don't know that it affects the value of the unit in as much as that affects the function of the unit, because it could be a room upstairs with a 5-foot doorway. Again, that gets into, when we got into the health code definition of a bedroom versus the functional aspect of a bedroom. So we felt, or we feel, that it's important, and based on just looking at the market and what is out there, how we see these units being built, the options that most people are going with. It's not really to have that third bedroom as a bedroom for more occupants, daily occupants, if you will. It's more of a lifestyle, function of the lifestyle, as in, visiting people, or if there's a caregiver, or the situation, thinking forward. If the units are designed for handicapped adaptability, thinking that maybe someday there may be a caregiver that has to, move in with them. And if we were to call that technically not a bedroom by keeping a 5-foot opening on there, then you run into privacy issues if you have a caregiver living there and so forth. So there's a lot of factors that weigh in on whether you classify it as a bedroom or a room or a loft or what have you. And it really becomes a function.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
What I got from Bo's statement, though, was that we were concerned about the availability of these things for the Orange residents. Not that they're, I take you at your word that they were built with Orange residents in mind.
Sure.
But what is the prospective cost differential? I understand you can't give us numbers, hard and fast numbers, actual numbers, but you can certainly figure out how much of a percentage the 3 bedrooms are going to cost more than the 2 bedrooms.
Well, I mean, if you really think about it practically, we could have the same unit type, called a 2,500 square foot unit, with the same layout. However, on
one has a half
one
wall,
unit,
one has a full wall.
we do, a 5-foot opening, and the other unit we have a door. Effectively, what's the cost difference? Essentially, the cost of a door and some hardware really is what it comes down to. As far as you're still building the same shelter.
After that, it's really what the market will bear, because it'll be.
Well, yeah, but functionally, physically speaking, of what's the physical cost difference to that? And again, if it's a unit that has a 5-foot opening versus a door, and that particular buyer's thinking, a guest or a future caregiver or something like that, that becomes the weighing factor of whether I want the door or not.
But that's exactly my point, though, is that, because that would then become a weighing factor and affect the marketability and therefore the price of that unit. And I think there are, as demonstrated by the architect, there's some of those units upstairs where I just looked at a certain room and said, I would consider this a bedroom by definition. You take a half wall there, okay, now it's no longer a bedroom, but it would, or make a larger opening, and now it's no longer a bedroom by definition. But it would, because of its location or with a minor bit of screening, function, especially in an emergency situation, as a 3rd bedroom. And I wouldn't object to that, and I don't think anybody else would. I don't know. But I think there is that option available. And just like anybody else in their home, sometimes we're faced in life with emergency situations where we have to either adapt our home or move to a home that meets our needs, whether we grow out of a home because we have children, or whether we're leaving our large home because we no longer have children. That all goes into the buyer's decision to buy or not to buy, and what to buy when they make a decision. My concern is, as I stated, to keep as many as possible within reach of Orange residents.
And just as a point, I would say that, whether it's an Orange resident or a out of Orange resident, the fact of the matter is the functionality of the unit is going to function the same way. Orange residents have kids that live in California, or maybe have the potential for a caregiver. So, understand, and I understand your point from a perspective
I'm looking at the
why it wouldn't be so valuable.
Of a resident in Orange who has their 1,200 square foot ranch that they built in 1960 to now sell it for $350,000 and be able to move somewhere into one of these units. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would guess that the 3-bedroom duplexes at the top of the hill are going to go in well in excess of $350,000. And so I think that's there's a market for that as well, and I think we want to keep as many as we can in the market range of Orange resident, is my feeling. This is going to be, if it goes forward, it's obviously going to be a nice development. It's got nice character to it. There's been a lot of detail put into the design plans, the layout of the whole street venues and so on. So, these are going to be nice units and pricey units at that. Anything that's nicely built and nicely laid out is going to demand a nice price.
Also, in looking at our PRD regulations, which we know are not age restricted, their regulation there says the minimum of 66% of the dwelling units shall consist of efficiency and 1-bedroom units. The balance may be 2/3, maybe 2 or 3 bedroom units. So at that time, there was a bias to have the majority of that type of project be smaller. And I don't know if I was looking for some consistency with this new product called, active adult community and existing PRDs.
I'm not really looking for the consistency, because initially I was when I first viewed it, but then I think as the public hearing went on, we all come to realize that this is not a typical, even related to our existing PRD regs. It is a whole new venue that we'd be going down if we just so decide. And again, my concern is really to keep it within the reach of Orange residents. I know that we're obviously going to get them, and I welcome the people who come in from out of town, but it is going to be a development in the town of Orange, and I'd like to see it possibly benefit as many Orange residents as we could if we go forward.
I was just going to say the PRD regulations really maybe were crafted more with an apartment type dwelling in mind rather than attached and detached homes.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Ben?
Mr. Chairman, just to answer Commissioner Kaplan's question about OPM. Under 16A32, subsection B, that provides, and I'll read this because I think it answers the question. It really smells of an Administrative Procedures Act appeal. So I think there would be all the appeal rights that would be similar to any appeal rights from this board.
So the main thing is that it's not sorry about that. The main thing is that I was trying to get to is that it's another appealable issue, another roadblock for a developer trying to get the project approved. Not insurmountable, but it's another roadblock.
Right, and I'll paraphrase paragraph B, but just so you can see all the processes involved, it's upon the written application of any person to OPM. The Secretary of OPM has to adopt regulations for the proceeding. Such regulations shall include, but need not be limited to, provisions for interviews and consultations with local planning and zoning commissions, or in those municipalities which have adopted the provisions, or I'll skip over that. The Secretary shall notify the CEO and the persons exercising planning and zoning powers in a municipality. So you're getting involved, your selectmen and this commission here. Then there has to be a joint public hearing by the Secretary and the committee, this committee, in this town regarding it.
Our committee?
Yes. And the committee shall hold a hearing in addition to any hearings required to be held in any municipality concerning the locational guide map and any proposed changes. So there's a series of local hearings that would be required following the notice to this board and the first selectman. And then there would be, it's an administrative procedure, so it would be an appeal under the Administrative Procedures Act. Okay.
And just so that I'm clear, this easement area, not no, I'm sorry, conservation area, for lack of a better word, this conservation area runs from where to where?
This conservation, and in fact, you know, as I was standing here, I just, I didn't want to go get it for fear that you'd all leave. But upstairs in the first selectman's office, I have in the DEP application that we filed a few months back, a copy of the map, the OPM map. So I can show it to you tonight, if Jim is still upstairs. But we have essentially, it starts at the eastern boundary of the proposed property, runs across Route 34 and goes down eastward down Route 34.
To where is my point? In other words,
to where? Toward West Haven. I think it ends around the West Haven boundary line. It goes into West Haven because I believe that's where the Maltby Lakes are.
So
it's all watershed.
It's all considered to be in that conservation area. In other words, all of Route 34.
All of Route 34 up to about the Hind Farm.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you go on to your other deliberation, I'll go upstairs and see if.
No, that's okay. Sorry, I just wanted to get a general idea of where it was on 34.
Okay.
Before I forget, we did have a letter that was submitted to the commission from Mitchell Goldblatt. He requests that we read it into the record. It's dated September 4th. It's addressed to the Planning and Zoning Commission and all the commissioners regarding Sunrise Hill Estates Active Adult Community Application. Dear Chairman Clark and Commissioners, unfortunately, due to a previous commitment, I cannot attend your meeting at this evening in person, so I ask that this correspondence be read into the public record. I have watched OGAT with dismay at the presentation has continued over the Active Adult Community submitted by Sunrise Hill Estates, LLC, for the intersection of Route 34 and Route 121. It is so ironic that we have all heard how Stewlanders will change the character in the town. The debate on that continues, but one thing is for sure, approval of this application by Sunrise Hill Estates before your commission this evening will change the character of the town. The Town Planning and Zoning Commission must deny these applications for a number of reasons that I will delineate here in the form of questions for you to deliberate and decide. Many people think this is a senior housing project. It is not. It is an active adult community. I think that's been made clear throughout the public hearing that this is not a senior housing community, which will not address the true needs of our senior citizens. It will, however, provide an alternative form of housing not currently available here, but not for seniors, and certainly not for seniors in need. In just 5 years, I will be eligible to reside in such a community if I can figure out a way to hide my pre-college age children. Well, yeah, we've dealt into that. Quite, there's always going to be people trying to sneak through, and we have to trust on somebody trying to be honest. And if not, we have regulations to protect that. While there is a need for affordable senior housing, is there a need for an active adult community in our town? The second point, the sanitary sewer connection will open the proverbial Pandora's box. If this proposal is approved, how will you be able to deny another multifamily development that has its own connection to the Derby sewer system? How will you deny an affordable housing application that conforms to state statute after approving sewer district on the west side of town? Well, I think Mr. Marino just addressed that issue. The third point, the units that will be set aside as affordable meet no acceptable standard of affordability and will not even be made available to those in need. How will this assist the town of Orange in working towards the goals of state affordable housing statutes? The answer to that is it will not. The applicant has never portrayed these as affordable units. They are market-controlled units. And as far as addressing our statutory goal of having 10%, which is virtually impossible to attain, this will not have any effect on that. All of our age-restricting housing age-restricted housing is for individuals 62 and over. Attempts to lower that in the past have always been denied. Why should we change our zoning requirements for this particular developer? We've gone over that subject considerably as well. Number 5, we have tried to preserve our town's resources by both purchasing open space and expanding the building lot size to 60,000 square feet. This developer already has an approved conventional high-end subdivision of 21 homes that is consistent with these goals in the surrounding neighborhoods. Is the developer changing his plans because of the needs of our community or his needs in an oversaturated housing market? And is that fair to neighbors who endured these public hearings and have accepted those plans? Traffic is, number 6, traffic is typically not a major concern with residential subdivisions. However, while the original proposal for 21 homes had raised some traffic concerns, how do you explain to the same neighbors that traffic will be multiplied by over 6 times the number of cars with this proposal than the already approved subdivision? We went over that at length as well. Number 7, cluster housing development by nature has been discussed by Orange Town Plan and Zoning Commissions for decades. Yet the idea behind any cluster development was to allow homes while preserving open space. For example, a cluster development on 30 acres with acre and one-half zoning would consist of 20 clustered units and at least 15 acres left as open space. These proposals were never approved due to density, even with the open space component. How then can we, as a community, not even consider a cluster housing development? Even consider a cluster housing development of 142 units on 36 acres with no preserved open space. We do have some preserved open space on this. This is not a cluster development. It's kind of ironic too, because Mitch did serve on this commission, but cluster housing is specifically addressed in the state statute 8.2, where we're instructed to do it, and also in our plan of conservation and development under the zoning policies to examine cluster development. So even though this is not a cluster development, those points really don't apply, and it is, as I said, it's stated directly in 8.2, which is the cornerstone of all zoning regulations. It's mentioned, I think, 2 or 3 times, cluster development, and also in our plan of conservation and development, where we have a provision, I think it's the second bullet point in our residential zoning policies, cluster development. But
I think that both the tone of Mitch's letter and also Cheryl Schechter's comments, I took them to mean the concern for density.
Yeah. It goes on to say, while this application may be in the best interest of the developer, it is not the best interest of the town of Orange. We should be working towards affordable senior housing surrounded by open space and in an area that will not compromise the development of our town. The proposal before you achieves none of these goals. If you cannot answer all of the above questions to the satisfaction of our community, you need to deny these applications. If even one of these points causes concern, you should not feel an obligation to change our regulations to satisfy a developer that is not addressing affordable senior housing. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Mitchell R. Goldblatt, 291 Drummond Road, Orange, Connecticut. In the record. Is there anybody else at this time from the audience that would like to address either the commission, the applicant, Mr. Marino, or please come forward?
Again, I'm Bob Gillette from Old Silo Road. What I'd like to do is just to address or ask a couple of questions about the 66% or 2/3 of the housing being 1 and 2 families, affordable to Orange. Hearing, not sure, developer saying that there is no difference in the cost of the houses because it's going to be a den or it's going to be a bedroom. The only way that we can guarantee something like that is that all construction is based on the square footage. And what I'm hearing here is that a 2-bedroom is going to be the same square footage as a 3-bedroom, except the den is going to be a bedroom. So if we're looking to have something that's going to be more affordable for the town, the people from Orange that may want to move into this, we should be looking at the square footage of the units that are 2 bedrooms rather than just 2 bedrooms in a den. Because if you have 2 bedrooms in a den, I'm handy. I can put up studs, sheetrock, put in a door. I'm not sure that I need a building permit just to take a 5-foot entranceway and make it to 30 or 36 inches, depending whether I need a wheelchair or not.
Well, you actually would need a a permit for this because there are different governing factors. And I think we are kind of comparing 2 different things. I think the developer was stating that the cost for building these units would certainly not be any much different, if different at all. I mean, it would be a matter of
But I'm assuming that's square footage. I mean,
well, no, yeah. The fact of the matter is, we still have to sell this product.
Right.
Whether, we could think in a perfect world that, a 2-bedroom with a den versus a 3-bedroom is going to be, X amount of dollars less than that. But the fact also could be is that that unit could not sell because it would not serve the need of the potential buyer. So that's we still have to sell the units, and as a developer and a builder, we want to put in as many safeguards and appeal to as much of the marketplace as we can, because if you're going to have 10 different buyers, you're going to have 10 different opinions as far as what they feel is the proper layout or product. So we want to have that ability to obviously sell the units and meet the needs of as many potential scenarios that could occur with caregivers and guests and things of that nature. So that's the purpose of that, of our concern for that.
Well, I just wanted to address your point about 2 or 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
And, my retirement home, I'm thinking about it very soon, 3 or 4 years, is a 3-bedroom ranch, 2-bath, unfinished basement, and 2-car garage. But so, and I want to have a work corner.
Are there any other questions or comments for the applicant?
Dorothy Berger, 249 Charles Court. Looking forward to moving into Fieldstone Village. Well, times haven't changed much. The government still has its problems. And I would like to commend this board on your patience, your diligence in the work that you have put forth in addressing the needs of the people in this community. 56 years ago, I sat in a classroom in college, and the topic was contemporary issues. And the number one issue was dealing with the aging population. Little did I think 56 years later that I was part of the problem. And now it's up to you, the youth of Orange, to try to resolve that contemporary problem that still exists. I see it as a matter of compromise, as I listened here tonight. One, Mr. Clark, I was happy to hear you say about the 1 and 2 bedrooms. Do I like having it 55? No, I would prefer 62. But I also recognize that we do have varying needs in this community, and it does call for compromise. But when we compromise, we want everyone to be a winner. We certainly want the developer to be a winner because we want him to put up quality structures. And we want us, the elderly, hate to say that, to also be a winner in the compromise. And we also have to recognize that there is a younger population of age 55 that also wants to stay in Orange. So I ask that as you proceed with your decision, it isn't an easy one, I know, but to think of the compromise and what will be the best for Orange. We say Orange, I think of it as a rural community. I arrived here in 1952. Mary L. Tracy School existed, the only school in town, Orange Center Road School. Big gymnasium. Everybody said, why such a big gymnasium? Oh, the answer was easy. It was only going to be the school Orange would ever need. Well, we certainly have seen a change there. And life does change, and with it we have to change, and we want to change for the better. And so I ask, as you go through your deliberations, to think what is the better for all of Orange, for a community that is changing, and especially for those who did work to raise a child in a village. It's time for that village to take a moment and think about those who helped to raise that child, that being the aging population in the town of Orange. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to address the commission? Do the commissioners have any more questions for the applicant? Mr. Marino?
I just want to complete the record on this. Sorry to keep coming back, but this will be hopefully my last time. All right, so that the record is clear. The area to the east of this property is designated as conservation area and preservation area. That designation...
And that designation's from the OPM?
Yeah, I have...
That's okay.
I have their map right here. Yeah. And that designation continues along Route 34 on the north side of Route 34 all the way into West Haven and beyond. It looks like well into West Haven. To the south side, which would be, looks like in the vicinity of the Racebrook Country Club, it changes back to neighborhood conservation, which is what this property is designated as. So excuse me, I see that area as being not terribly exposed, because in order to get sewers to it, you would have to either go through what would be a prohibited area or come from West Haven. Okay. The areas here, which are to the west of Grassy Hill and to the north of Route 34, are all designated as neighborhood conservation area. So with respect to this project, the only areas of exposure we'll call it would be the immediate area, which a developer would have to go directly to Derby to get permission. They would not be able to simply attach onto this system.
Again, the only qualification I'd put on what you said was that presupposing that there was the appeal rights made it so difficult so as to not make it practically possible.
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
Understand. Thank you very much.
Porter? Or Mr. Gordon? I see you huddling over there.
Right. I think we have a couple of comments I'd like to make in the nature of closing comments, unless there's going to be any additional questions for us.
Well, let's see what the comments are. Maybe we'll have some more questions. Maybe we won't.
All right, great.
I might just respond a little bit to Mr. Goldblatt's letter. Back probably about 20 years ago, I came before the Zoning Commission in an informal application back when Paul and I were just puppies in the business. And it was Diane Moll, Giulio Balestrino, Roger Boyd, Fred Wolf, and Mitch Goldblatt sitting on the commission. And it was the site where the Christmas tree shops is, and we proposed to bring in a senior housing development there. And we were accused of trying to bring condominiums into Orange into sheep's clothing, and that never in a million years would any idiot put a senior housing near the post road. Of course, I smiled at that when Silverbrook 2 was built, because that was a lot closer to the post road than what we were talking about. But then we looked at other different developments, and we pushed to do senior housing or age-restricted housing in Orange, a number of different areas. And as was mentioned by one of the public, there are very limited opportunities in Orange because of the sewering limitations. The Council of Governments in the state of Connecticut in their smart growth initiatives talked about denser development along transportation corridors or near other commercial areas. Route 34 is a major transportation corridor. It gives you access to the Merritt Parkway and to Route 8. And there is a large commercial district right over the town line in Derby that's readily available for such ones. It is in harmony with smart growth. When that report was developed, I remember at the time, First Selectman Goldblatt did not want to sign on onto the smart growth initiative. And frankly, I think that we all should be looking at this type of smart growth with walkable communities, with good access to transportation nodes. Just listening to part of the letter there, I do appreciate his observations of the OGAT hearings. Yes, as Mr. Clark mentioned, this is not a senior housing proposal. It's a totally different animal in the sense that it's more varied, it offers greater opportunity, and the design standards become different in that regard. It is not an affordable housing application, but it does have that set aside of a number of units that will always be within reach of any Orange resident who's selling a house and wants to buy one here. We don't want to say, oh, it's always been 62, why should we ever change it? Because if that's the case, we would be back with our 15 and 20,000 square foot building lots in the town of Orange, or even further back, we'd be in Quonset huts and teepees. We've always been willing to adjust to the demands of the community, and as time moves on, and as you saw that handout, age 55 is really what's out in the marketplace, and if our project is to have an opportunity to compete, we definitely have to be going with what the market demand is. And the last thing I want to comment on is talking about, I'm not going to get into the open space because that's been discussed enough in this town over the last year or so, but when we go back to the 60,000 square foot building lots, large lots do not conserve open space. History has proven that, you know, if you take a pie and you slice big slices, you run out of pie a lot faster. So the idea is to try to create smaller sizes with the perimeter. This development application has active open space, it has passive open space, and in addition to that, it has a required buffer area which would be planted. This site is an open field. It is not a pristine woodland of some nature with wonderful existing features. We are going to be doing quite a bit of landscaping and planting and creating things. We're going to be creating a wetlands habitat area that doesn't currently exist. So we are going to take an open field and do something quite attractive with it.
Thank you.
And I'll be brief. My thoughts are this. What Mr. Zioli shared with the commission I think is instructive. I think what it shows is that other towns have walked our blueprint, some of our neighboring towns, and the product is standing up quite well. I think that there is a demand for 55 and older, and I think a lot of the members of the public have attested to that. And there was some conversation earlier this evening about what role would the association play versus what role would this commission play. Mr. Chairman, we don't want to bring to you problems. We're trying to bring to you solutions, and I mean it sincerely, and I can back that up. This project, if approved, has very little cost to the town, but it does have a lot of benefits in that we are shouldering the financial burden. The applicant, and then the applicant will then transfer a lot of those costs to the association. So the town's not going to maintain these roads, and it's not going to maintain the sewer. So we've never asked the town to have to pay for the cost of this association or this development, and we're not going to ask for the town's assistance in trying to regulate it. Now, to the extent that this commission feels that it wants to remain with the ability to oversee it, well, that's fine, and your participation is certainly invited. But my point to you is we don't want to be a burden. We want to offer a solution to both the commission and to the town. So, well, with that, I believe. Oh, and then the other thing I would add, and this is a little bit of tight rope walking, because your points are well taken. We want Orange residents to be able to move into this, and I said that from the first time I appeared before you, and so has the applicant. However, restricting the number of units to 1 and 2 homes, well, quite frankly, it puts the developer in a little bit of a difficult situation, and I believe Doug did a nice job of explaining that to you. We want the people of the town of Orange to live here. We've committed to a certain percentage of cost-controlled homes, and that is our effort to kind of put our money where our mouth is, to make sure people of this town have the ability and opportunity to come here. Our only concern, quite frankly, and Commissioner Kaplan has pointed out a couple times, we can't control the market forces. So while we want the people of the town of Orange to be able to live here, we also want the ability to build it so the people of the town of Orange can live here. So by restricting to 67% 1 and 2 family homes, it is a
1 and 2 bedroom homes.
Homes, yeah. Thank you, sorry, 1 and 2 bedroom homes. It is a potential concern. I wouldn't say it's a fatal blow, but I would say it's a concern, and I would just like you, all of you, to keep that in mind during your deliberation.
Are there any additional questions? Please come forward.
I just have one, Dorothy Berger, 249 Charles Court. I have one question regarding the roads. Are those going to be private, is that a private road or is that a town road? I ask the question because school buses cannot go over private roads. So, and instead of the 67, you might want to go to 62.
Get the number somewhere, right?
The roads are going to be private roads.
Yes, roads are private.
Yeah.
That's correct.
While you're there, Mr.
Built all the town standards, obviously.
Yeah. While you're at the podium, do you have the proposal for keeping the market controlled? What is the mechanism that's going to be in place for that?
Yeah, I think you asked me that earlier, and it's going to be in the declaration documents, and I can get that to town council certainly, but I do not have it with me this evening. I do not.
But what is the proposal? I mean,
Well,
are you going to limit it to, say, 5% growth a year, 3%,
Yeah.
10%?
Yes. What was it? I think it was 4%.
There were three options there.
Right. We'll go with the middle one. Yes, I believe, Mr. Chairman, I believe it was 3% that we were anticipating, with what we were referring to as like a sunset provision, that it would fade out over the course of like 15 or 20 years.
Okay. 3% annually. Okay.
What percentage of the homes will be this cost control?
11%.
11%.
No, 11 units.
11 units.
11 units.
Okay. And will any of them be three-bedroom, or will they all be the smaller model?
No, they're going to be the smaller models.
They'll all be the one-bedroom central unit in the triplex units, which are down closest to 34. Are there any other questions or comments from the public? Do any of the commissioners have any additional requests for information or questions? Do we want to close the public hearings at this time, or do we want to deliberate a bit and see if we come up with any other requests for information? We can still get information from the town attorney. We can still get information from Mr. Miller if so desired.
With regard to the 55 versus 62 issue, is there a way for, obviously, once we close the public hearing, we can't negotiate or have a back and forth with the developer. But so that's, we're going to be put in a position of having to do one or the other. In other words, or
we could do whatever we so choose. I mean, we
Okay.
can
There
decide
are
that
regulations.
Yeah.
We
57
obviously
or,
know their
you know,
input and what they propose, and
Right.
then we deliberate and come up with the end
so we don't have
product.
to accept their proposed regulation as verbatim and with an up or down vote.
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, obviously, the applicant would like us to, but, you know, we're the deciders, you know.
We draft the regs, so it's
Right.
the product that we want.
So I don't see why we keep the public hearing open, but, you know.
Any comments, Brian, or?
I think that there was a great deal of questions that the commission had, and you've really discussed some of these issues, and I think it's, I don't see any other information that we would need from the applicant at this point.
One thing before we go down the list, then, if we're going to go and close the public hearings, is we do have letters that were submitted. They were in our packets, and they should be noted. They are in the public record from both the police department and the fire department regarding the extension of the Skyview Drive cul-de-sac beyond the 1,400-foot limit. I'll read the police commission, no, CC'd from the police commission. It's from the chief. I have reviewed the plans to extend the cul-de-sac of Skyview Road as part of the Sunrise Hill Estates / Fieldstone Village project. I feel that the extension of Skyview Road cul-de-sac will not have any negative impact upon the police or emergency medical services. Please contact me if you should have any questions or require further information. The fire marshal's letter is somewhat longer and addresses some other issues, but in the body of it, he addresses the same. It's addressed to Mr. Gordon. It says, as per your request, this letter will serve as confirmation that the original site access issues that I had for the proposed Fieldstone Village project have been satisfied. Based on your last submittal for the project and our discussions at the July 5th, 2007 pre-subdivision meeting, the project will provide the requested 16-foot wide emergency access road from the Skyview Drive cul-de-sac to allow emergency vehicles a secondary remote entrance to the site. This access road will be paved surface that is required to be maintained so it is accessible at all times, including ice and snow removal that will be done by the property management. From a fire safety aspect, the incorporation of this is the part that addresses the extension. From a fire safety aspect, the incorporation of this access road makes the extension of Skyview Drive cul-de-sac acceptable as part of the subdivision application. In addition, it was my strong recommendation that the proposed homes be equipped with domestic fire suppression systems to allow for a higher degree of safety for residents. As you indicated, the project will have these critical life safety systems installed and will be maintained by property management. Furthermore, the concerns originally stated regarding the poor water supply for fire suppression will be corrected by extending the existing water main from Sodom Lane and Derby up Grassy Hill Road as per Regional Water Authority agreement. If these statements are not correct, or if you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to contact me.
Does the developer agree with a sprinkler system?
Yeah,
Units?
we covered, yes.
They do, but again, as we mentioned earlier, I think we should incorporate that into our regulation, and then the developer doesn't have any option of agreeing with it or not. But they did state that they were planning to do this anyway.
Right, yeah, we have no problem with that.
At this time, then, we'll ask if anybody wishes to make a motion to close the public hearing to the petition to amend the Orange zoning regulations.
I'll move that we close the petition to amend the Orange zoning regulations.
We have a motion. Would anybody care to second it?
Second. That's the public hearing.
That's the public hearing, to close the public hearing, and this is on the petition to amend the zoning regulations. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. The second public hearing is the special permit application submitted by Sunrise Hill Estates. And this is also the public hearing with the site plan application has been submitted. At this time, do we wish to close the public hearing on these two issues?
I move that we, so moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We have the application for a temporary special earth materials removal and filling, and an application for a certification of soil erosion and sediment control. Do we have a motion to close the public hearings on those two issues?
I so move.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Passes unanimously. And lastly, we have a re-subdivision application, and this is the extension of the Sunrise Hill cul-de-sac.
I'll move that we close the public hearing with regard to that as well.
Have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the commission.
Do we wish to begin our deliberations, or do we want to take a break, or? We're right at the crossroads of whether we should proceed at this time, or?
I think if we start our deliberations, we're not getting out of here
Okay.
for a while. I mean, that's my take on it.
Okay. We'll do that then. I guess we'll just have this on the agenda for our next meeting then.
I think we should approve our old minutes that we didn't do yet.
Yes.
On the 18th? I'll go for that.
Excuse me? The 17th? 17th. 18th, okay, you're right. It is late. Before we move on to the minutes, I think there's a couple things that we could maybe have Mr. Miller choose the right place to address them if we're all in agreement on them, before we even go into our deliberations. And that is we had the issue of sprinklers, that we should incorporate that into the regulation, whether we approve it or not. I think that should go forward as part of the regulation, and perhaps Mr. Miller could find the appropriate place to put that before we begin our deliberations. Should examine Ozzy's concerns and maybe discuss that with Mr. Marino. And that was to do with issues 4 and 5 and the, how to deal best with the under 21 and the time limit, and the two of you can get together and and work on that.
That's the reasonable standard that we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The incorporation of the minimum water pressure, and as we discussed, we want to just leave wording in there that be reviewed by the fire marshal, I guess, was, roughly how we want to put it. That it be served by public water with sufficient pressure as approved by the fire marshal. Again, that all sprinklers be required. I guess a question would be, and maybe we could just leave it kind of a blank, but incorporate it into the proposed regulation if we want to either address the bonding issue or require that the recreational facilities be put in after a certain amount of units were built.
That would be
kind
a
of two different
condition.
approaches.
That would
Yes.
be,
A
that's
condition.
not going to be built into the regs.
Okay, yeah, that's right, you're right, yeah.
We could actually put something in the regs that
Because we do
at
have a
least
regulation that
allows
does
you to
require-
do that, yeah. And then when you get into the specific application, then we can pick whether it's the 50th unit or however.
But I thought he clarified the recreational areas could be bonded.
They could be,
Right.
yeah. But I think it's important too, for future use too, that we do have in this, there are provisions for different types of units. For other developments, you have to, have these applications to cover them as well. So we may want to address that, and we can always take it out when we actually enter into deliberations, but I think it's important to find a place for it, and we can eliminate it or amend it as we see fit when the time comes.
Bo, is it appropriate for us to find out with some of these other active adult communities what the density is relative to what is working in other areas? And is it appropriate for us to reach out to them? I certainly do it on my own.
I think the answer to that is that we can't bring in additional evidence once the public hearing has been closed. Am I correct with that?
Yes, I think you could ask me questions about it. My feeling though on the density is it works. What works someplace may not work in other places. So if I could come up, even if I came to you with a list that said, in Milford they allow 6 units per acre, and Woodbridge they allow 4 units per, whatever it is, I'm not sure that would provide a whole lot of guidance for you.
Yeah. I think it also, when we looked at I think it's kind of answered when we looked at the different approaches they had to ages. I mean, they were all over the ballpark, and, so I think we just have to figure what's most appropriate for the town of Orange. And how we handle that. Any other issues that you would like either Mr. Marino or Mr. Miller to look at before we come back? And I think it's important that both Mr. Miller and Mr. Marino be here for our deliberations. We're obviously going to have several legal questions and planning questions to go along. So, September 18th. Okay. Before we adjourn, we have the issue of the unapproved minutes of the meeting of the August 7th. We had 2 issues that I raised for Tammy, and she corrected one, and we still have the La Jolla one, which, that's a tough name. I would have never get. The only reason I know is because I looked on the letter that he sent. Otherwise I would have no clue. And another thing that Tammy did incorporate into this was Jeff Gordon had mentioned a specific number of the water pressure would be increased to, and I felt it was important to keep that number in there. Originally, I think it read would increase the water pressure or something of that nature, and I thought it was important to have the number that he stated would be there in the record. I don't think we're going to hold them to the 68 pounds, but I mean, obviously, we want to have something in that region.
And Paul, did you notice on page 8, I did inquire about Bear and Grill on your behalf.
But did you hear Paul when he was talking about it today? I was this close from pushing it, and he gave us an update, which is only 2 or 3 weeks away.
Fantastic, that's great.
For landscaping and parking striping, not food.
So at this point, I'll have to ask Commissioners Smith, Morgan, and Parenti to make a motion and second it.
I move move that we approve the minutes from the August 7 meeting
Okay. As amended?
as amended.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passes 3-0 with 2 abstentions. There being nothing else on tonight's agenda, do we have a motion to close the meeting?
I'll move that we close the hearing.
We have a motion?
Second.
The September 4th meeting is closed at 10:15. I guess it's time to go home.